Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Alexander Saucedo, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Place your hand over your heart. Repeat with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, roll call. Let the record reflect that all board members and all cabinet members are present either in person or electronically. Turn it over to Mr. Bailey for the swearing in of our new board member.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Alexander Saucedo, to my left, your right. And it's also my pleasure to swear him in this evening from Amistad High School as our newest student board member. Alexander has attended Shadow Hills High School and Desert Ridge Academy. His highlights of his educational career in Desert Sands include being Student of the Year at Desert Ridge Academy and being recognized by teachers at Amistad High School for his hard work and kindness. His hobbies include photography, cooking, dancing, and of recently running. His leadership experience includes vice president of the GSA Club in 2019 and organizing multiple group studying activities. His volunteer experience includes helping teachers set up a press conference at a back-to-school night. He's also volunteered to help teachers at his local church to help other Bible study students understand. And a unique fact about Alexander, he loves to sing and plant food in the backyard. Do you do both those at once? Do you do both of those at once? Do you sing and plant? Okay. And Alexander, I want to introduce also your principals here, Dr. G, Dr. Gustafson. Thank you for joining us this evening. And also your mother is here. And your mother's name is Sandra, is that correct? Excellent. Well, welcome. We appreciate that. So now comes the moment you've been waiting for. We get to go down in front of everyone. And I get to swear you in officially. You ready? All right.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 2nd, 2021 board meeting?
Moved, Patricia Pierce.
Pierce? Is there a second? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Mr. Bailey, is there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No changes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda of tonight's meeting?
So moved, Wendy Jonathan.
Second?
Second.
Second by
Alex, second.
Alexander Saucedo. Any discussion? Preferential vote?
Aye.
In favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries 6-0. Community staff student recognition, Mr. Bailey.
All right, I would like to invite up to the podium Mrs. Mary Perry, our PIO, Public Information Officer.
Thank you so much. I actually have a lot of things to go through tonight, but you know, my boss told me to talk fast, and I think he knows me rather well, and I do talk pretty darn fast, so we're going to get through this pretty quickly. If you remember at the last board meeting, we announced that Dr. Kelly Mae Vollmer was named to the board of directors of COSIN, and at that time I hinted that we were going to have another major announcement from that organization. And I want to let you know that we were awarded the Community Leadership Award for Digital Equity by COSIN. And this award actually encourages and recognizes districts who are working to eliminate inequities and narrow the access gap. And it recognizes our commitment to the core values of equity, celebrates the tremendous effort of all of our staff, and we try our best, and I think we very much succeed in providing that access and equitability to our 27,000 students. So congratulations to the Ed Services and Technology teams, as well as the entire staff. And this, I'm going to try this for the first time to use some slides. So this one is each year, DSUSD recognizes staff members as Teacher of the Year, Principal of the Year, Administrator of the Year, and one of those awards recognizes our Confidential Employee of the Year. This year, we presented the DSUSD Confidential Employee of the Year to Consuelo Rodriguez, or as we know her as Connie, but it didn't stop there. Connie has been named the Riverside County Office of Education's Confidential Employee of the Year. And she was honored last week in a surprise virtual visit by the county superintendent, Dr. Edwin Gomez. He was joined by Superintendent Bailey and others from both the county and our own district. Needless to say, there were a lot of Connie tears as the plethora of comments were made from our team. She's one of those people who work behind the scenes. She's the confidential administrative assistant for the Director of Classified Staff, and anyone who relies on Connie will tell you she never says no to any request. So we're going to play this quick little video. Sean, you want to go back one? So this is just after Connie received the award. Come on Thanks, Sean. And Ralph, sorry, both of you. So the next one I'd like to tell you about is actually one that I take particular pride in. And it seems like just days ago was the 2020 California School Public Relations Association annual conference. On the final day of the conference, they sent us all home because it was March 13th, and we all had to come back and deal with school closures. So we've had virtual CalSPR this year, and the communications team won an award. It's the Award of Merit for our community engagement program. And we laughingly had said to each other as we would do planning and discussing that our plan was called Promotion in Motion, because that's what we did. We were called upon to react and come up with new programs, reinvent others, and so we're very, very proud. And I would like to just call out the team, who of course includes Superintendent Bailey, Communications Specialist Jan Diaz, Director of Community Engagement and Foundation Sean Webb, our own borrowed media specialist Sean Insinius, and our intern and Palm Desert High School graduate Stefan Pajovic. They make up the core of the communications team. So thank you, team, and congratulations. The next thing I want to point out to you are these pieces of artwork. So there's a group of DSUSD team members who are committed to keeping our students involved even during these virtual times. Those are the activities directors, and there are other cohorts, if you will, in middle school, as well as principals and designees from elementary schools. And they've created a series of spirit weeks throughout the year, and they range from Pajama Day to Team Day. So earlier this month, they created a spirit week called See Something, Say Something that focused on reducing acts of school violence. And part of the week included an art contest. So I'm very proud to take a moment to show you the winning projects of almost 40 submitted pieces. So these are the elementary school winners. These are the middle school, and of course, the high school. So congratulations to our winners. The next two awards I'm going to tell you, there's too many names to read out loud, but I wanted to let you know that Skills USA is a partnership of students, teachers, and industry leaders, and they work to ensure that America has a skilled workplace. Our students really excel. This is mostly our CTE programs, and they are, as you can see, consistent winners and state finalists. So I'm not going to read them all, but I am going to note the Amistad High School students, because tonight is Amistad High School night. So I would like to call out that Isaiah Baca and Rocio Vega have gone on to state for job interview skills, and Benjamin Flores and Pedro Michel are going to state for job skills demonstration. So congratulations, Dr. Gustafson and Amistad High School. And my last one is, as you probably know, last week we had Every Student Succeeding, and that is you can't turn pages with this on. So as you know, DAXA is the Deserts chapter for the Association of California School Administrators. And each year they get together to recognize one student from every school. These are students who have beat the odds for some particular subject matter, or coming to school, changing their life, or they shine at school, they've worked hard to improve. So if you don't have the access to the video that we played on this, it's a YouTube video, I've given you each a sheet of paper with the names of the students, and the link is on there. But again, I did promise that I would at least call out Amistad High Schools, and that was Brianna Serna. So congratulations again to Amistad High School, and thank you all for your time. Did I talk fast enough?
Yes, thank you.
Introduction of new and recently promoted employees.
I have one tonight. I would like to introduce the new assistant principal at Jefferson Middle School, Helen Chang. Helen, do you want to come on up to the podium, please?
Come.
Yeah, go ahead. You can bring him. Yeah. So I'm happy to tell you a little bit about Helen tonight. Helen Chang is a proud graduate of Syracuse University, where she earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in music education. Ms. Chang also holds a master's degree in educational administration from California State University, San Bernardino. Ms. Chang started her teaching career in 2004 as the district band director in Patterson, California, where she taught everything from beginning band to high school marching band. In 2006, Ms. Chang was hired at Thomas Jefferson Middle School as their band director. And during her tenure at Jefferson, her bands earned numerous superior and gold ratings at Southern California School Band and Orchestra Association competitions and at Forum music festivals. In 2019, Ms. Chang became the instructional coach at Jefferson, during which time she served on the MTSS team, the leadership team, and was also a school site council member, the webmaster, and the social committee treasurer. Ms. Chang was voted Teacher of the Year in 2009 and again in 2020, and was awarded the Education Excellence Award from the Coachella Masonic Lodge in 2017. Before COVID, Ms. Chang participated in the College of the Desert Symphonic Band as a member in the flute section, and she continues to perform whenever possible. Ms. Chang enjoys her free time at home with her husband Martin and her two sons, Elliot, age 6, and Wyatt, age 3. She likes to bake desserts to satisfy her dessert stomach and is a self-proclaimed foodie. Ms. Chang, welcome to the leadership team. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to start. I'm excited to stay with my Jaguar family. I've been there ever since I started here, so Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Do you want to introduce anyone else in your family that's with you here tonight?
Yeah, my husband Martin is back there, and my son Elliot.
Okay.
He is a kindergartner at Jackson Elementary this year. He's in the dual language program, so that's
Oh, great.
a stretch for me. And this is Wyatt, obviously. Yeah, he's.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
He keeps us busy.
congratulations again. Yes, that's great.
Thank you.
Here we have one information item. That's the Head Start Program Internal Monitoring Completion Report for January 2021. Then staff conference items, second interim report. Mr. Bailey.
Yes, I'll be inviting Mr. Jordan Aquino up, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Services.
Good evening. As we mentioned before, this is one of those times where we have to update the board on the district's financial projections. We have to submit a proposal or a budget and update 4 times a year, pretty much to the board, and this is our second interim for 2020-21. Some of the things we're going to go over are our assumptions in the budget. We're going to talk about enrollment, the local control funding formula, which pretty much funds everything we do in the district, typically around 70% of the district's general fund. We're going to talk about all the COVID relief funding we've had this year, what we've done with the funding that we've received, and what we anticipate doing with the funding that we have yet to receive. We're going to go over our multi-year projection and our new federal and state funding, because it does get pretty complicated because there's multiple funds that we receive, and then we'll talk about next steps. So for our budget, we have to build our budget based on a number of assumptions. Our budget is primarily made up of how many students we have in the district. That is a driving force for the amount of funding that we receive. So that is why we talk about enrollment so much, because it is the lifeblood as far as the district's finances go. With our estimated COLA, we use School Services of California's projections. This year we know we received 0% COLA. In 21-22, it is estimated to be at 3.84%, which is a combination of what the state should have, in a sense, funded us for in this current year, and then what the proposed COLA for next year would be at 1.5%. And then for 2022-23 at 1.28% COLA. Our stepping column is around 0.9 to 1.7%. That's for classified and certificated employees, respectively. Pension increases, we do have a significant impact to our budget due to PERS and STIRS increases that have been applied year over year over the last couple years. And we have inflation, so normal inflation. This year, even though things either got more expensive, which is on the natural, we did have a pretty good amount of utility savings because we were closed. So for typically higher months, March to June, we had savings in utilities in addition to fuel costs, and we'll talk about that, and then utility cost increases going forward. So now that we are opening back up, things are getting back to a schedule with regards to our cost on utilities. So here's a look at our enrollments. You can see the historical trend dating back to 2015-16. That blue line shows our enrollment as of a specific period of time, and that's around the month of October. That is our measurement period. In 2020-21, we declined almost 900 students, and our budget is forecasting flat enrollment. So if we either increase in enrollment, which would be great, if we decrease in enrollment, that would impact us from a financial perspective. On the funded ADA line, so ADA basically means the attendance. So if a student came to school 100% of the time, we would receive full funding for that, but if they don't, then we would get the difference. So what you see in that blue line to what that orange line is ultimately the lost funding due to student attendance goes. Our district is pretty typical with regard to a unified school district in respect to the attendance percentage, so we're in line with that. If not, we're a little bit even better than what the average district shows. And you can see on this chart here in 2022-23, that the state did give us a one-year reprieve, so our funded amount that we got, that we were supposed to get, they gave us a reprieve in 21-22. That's why you see that line going flat, that orange line. But that reprieve goes away in 22-23. And we'll talk about what that means to us from a financial perspective. Here's the amount of funds we received from the local control funding formula. Now, that has grown over time as the district, or as the state has re-envisioned how funding is applied to California schools through the local control funding formula. It used to be called revenue limit funding, but they now give funds to districts that are of more need. So we have a district that has more needs than some others, and that is calculated based on the unduplicated pupil percentage. In 2020-21, we did decline 596 students, and that is, let me see here, 2021, we declined about 596 students from a financial perspective, because that ultimately, that decline that we had in the previous year impacts us the following year. Now, in the year after that, we have an increase in our funding. That's about $11 million there. The state one-year reprieve says your declining enrollment is not going to impact you. We'll give you whatever the COLA is going to be, and that's 3.85%. So you see the bump there. And then in that last year, 2022-23, you see that blue box. That is a combination of both COLA and the ultimately inevitable decline that we experienced this year. We know for a fact we will be paid less in 2022-23 because we have less students this year. You can see the COLAs, 0, 3.84, 1.28%. And what does that mean to us from a net loss? Including the declining enrollment, including the COLA, this year we lost $5.5 million in the local control funding formula. We've gained $11 million, or we propose to gain $11 million next year, and we will inevitably lose $6.3 million in the following year. Now, this is a very important slide to analyze and look at. And why I say that is because at the end of the day, you're going to see a budget. It's going to have a ton of numbers on it. It's going to have different amounts. But at the end of the day, when all of that COVID relief dollars is gone, we will resume normalcy. And this is what is considered normalcy, stripping all the COVID relief dollars away. We declined in our enrollment from the previous year, which impacts us this year. That is in the tune of $5.5 million. Step and column, what step and column is a natural progression on the salary schedule that's inherently built. So as people stay in the district longer, they get automatic compensation, they cap out up to a certain amount. That cost the district $3.5 million in 2020-21. We did have the state do a buy down of our pension costs, so we saved $720,000 than what we would have paid from the previous year. And the attrition. And why is there savings due to attrition? The district did, and the board did a great job of making sure that we were going to try to minimize any impact to staff as far as a reduction to staff, any layoffs, things like that. So natural attrition. As our 596 students we've lost, staffing ultimately is based on the amount of students you have. So there's a reduction, a natural reduction of staffing that goes there. Because we've had retirements, things of that nature, we didn't have to ultimately do any layoffs or anything like that because we've saved through the natural attrition. If you look at 21-22, we are getting a COLA, $11 million. We know based on all the employees that we have in the district currently that the step and column for next year is going to cost us $3.6 million. And the state and PERS will go back to normal as far as the increases. That's 2.7 for a net gain in 21-22 of 4.7 million. In 22-23, because of the impact of the decline that happened this year, the COLA, proposed COLA of 1.28%, step and column PERS, and then no attrition built into this budget for that year, we're looking at a $14.7 million loss in 22-23. So COVID relief funding. LCFF, which is everything we just talked about, makes up typically 75%. Now, post-COVID, LCFF only makes up 60%. And that is because if you look at in relation to the overall revenues we received, all the CARES fundings and these COVID relief funds have now skewed that a little bit. So we are now at around 60% of LCFF making over the general revenues. For salary and benefits, it's typically at 86%. Post-COVID, we are 75%. Why are we at 75%? Because we are doing things like buying new technology, replacing computers that were outdated, that were older than 2015. We've done a lot of things that benefit the classroom with those new dollars. So as far as our one-time expenditures and supplies and services, we've received the CARES Act. That was in the tune of $21.3 million. That was the major COVID relief package plan that we received. On the coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations, that was 24.9. We have not received that yet. And we have not received, obviously, what was recently proposed or approved, I think it was March 10th, 2021, the $55 million through the American Rescue Plan through the Biden administration. The COVID, the CARES funds, the 21.3, just wanted to give you guys a recap as to what did we do with those funds. Our nutrition services support, we had to do things that were different than what we've done before with regard to providing meals. So we've given meals over the summer. We don't have the captive audience that we once have had. We typically were serving 120,000 meals a week, and we're getting around 60 to 80,000 meals those weeks. So that there was a loss there that we were incurring on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis for that matter. So we've contributed to supporting that. We've done some things as far as equipment goes, to the tune of $350,000. As you know, with the grab-and-go meals, it requires packaging, things like that. So we were able to replace outdated equipment in the food services department. We've done professional development, about $1.5 million. We've implemented a number of technology, which includes a lot of the LFDs that you hear about, Chromebooks, T-Mobile for online access, desktops, computer desktops, a bunch of those types of stuff. We gave allocations to school sites. So as they are opening, there's a lot of things associated with the reopening. So we gave schools $1.8 million, and we gave them a spending deadline of December 30th, 2020. SPED-specific support, safety measures. We talked about the HEPA filters, the ionizers, the PP&E, the MERV 13 filters. That was $2.6 million, and the repurposing of staff. So as we've had things like our bus drivers doing activities that are supporting the effort for bringing back students to school, we have charged those efforts, which are different from they are normally doing, to the CARES funds as well. Now here is the general fund combined. It is all the dollars that we received on our operational budget. We have a number of funds, some for capital expenditure purposes, self-insurance. This is the operational fund of the district. And you can see, if you look at it, you'd say $57 million, that is a lot of dollars, and then you show a deficit in the following year. Now, when you combine the general fund like this, it really doesn't mean so much from the layperson's eye, because you have to really break that down. And so we're going to do a very generic breakdown of that into two different groups, the unrestricted and the restricted. Now, the unrestricted general fund is really the fund that is the operating fund of the district. When we talk about the restricted side, those have ties to it. There's certain ways you have to spend the dollars. There's restrictions on how you spend it. The unrestricted fund is very discretion-based. We have a surplus this year of $8 million, and that was by design. We are looking at ways with the CARES that we could ultimately address areas in our budget because we have this huge, significant deficit. And they're ultimately one-year reprieves, but we are trying to address that without having to make any impacts to tough decision-making. You can see the 21-22 school year, the 22-23, that's where things start to get to some normalcy at 6.1. If I were to show you a fourth year, that deficit carries out in the fourth year as well. On the restricted side, we received a lot of dollars that we discussed, and we'll go into those in a little bit more detail. But you can see here the restricted side of the general fund and what the net change in ending balance will look like. So some of the new federal funding that we were receiving, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. That's $24.9 million. Our district has been meeting with stakeholders to figure out how can we effectively use those funds in the current year. So we know we are receiving those. We've known that for a while. And we have allocated $4.4 million to be used to maintain our current staff. So we've declined in enrollment. We know that we could apply that staff to mitigating learning loss. We want to have as many teachers as we can to help support that, whether that's addressing classroom needs, supplemental support. So in our budget, we have we show no reductions to staff, is because we are going to use the CARES to supplement that. And the reason why I say that that's a legitimate thing for us to do is that all of our funding and all of our formulas for staffing is based on students. And when you decline in students, ultimately you lose staffing that's associated with it. We want to use that staff for purposes of mitigating learning loss. And that's where the $4.4 million comes from. We provided an allocation to our schools that they will be receiving in the next 2 days for budget planning for 21-22. They are going to get $7 million. What does that mean to a school? It means a heck of a lot. And they are going to have a lot of autonomy as far as what kind of program, what are things that they can do that's going to ultimately affect their students. And they could figure out what ways they want to do with those funds. We provided all the schools, all the PP&E, everything that we can have, that we had in our warehouse. The last delivery will be on Friday, to supply them what we considered ultimately 2 years. So if they want to support additional PPE expenses, safety screens, HEPA filters, whatever you want to call it, they are going to have the ability and access to do that. And then $13.5 million balance is the planning phase that we are still having conversations about how we're going to use those funds. When we look at the American Rescue Plan, which was as late as March 10th, we do not have that included in the budget. Why? Well, today is March 16th, and to actually put that in a budget with plans and all that stuff after it was just approved, the timing is too short. We don't have that in the budget. We have our 4th meeting scheduled, I believe, for next Wednesday with the stakeholders, and that includes district administration and some of their department managers who are requesting different needs that they have to mitigate either learning loss or addressing this COVID-19 safety plan. We've identified $67 million worth of needs to mitigate learning loss. So that includes supplemental programs, all of those things. At the end of the day, we will be able to tap into these funds to help address those needs. Our in-person instruction grant. We submitted a safety plan. We qualified for additional funding in the amount of $8.7 million. Now, we have identified some uses for that funds that you will be presented to in an April meeting, and some of those uses will include the use of the cost savings that we had through the utility savings and the fuel cost savings. So we could get into more detail on that in April, but we know that we are applying some of those needs to bringing back students to in-person instruction, and how can we equitably apply that across the board with all of our employees. In addition to our expanded learning opportunities, that is not included in the budget. Why are these 2 grants not included in the budget? It's because the governor and the legislature just struck a deal on March 1. The budget was completed around that same time. So now that we have this information, we will go back to the budget to adjust it once we have a plan of action on how those funds are going to be spent. If you were in elementary school, you probably remember this, and that is building a story. You have an introduction, a build-up to it, you're attacking a problem, there's a cool-down period, and then you have the ending to the story. The use of these funds is exactly the same thing. We are in the planning phases of how we are going to effectively use these funds to address all the losses and needs that our students have because they've not been afforded all the opportunities that they would normally have been afforded if we were open normal the whole year. As we go through those planning phases, we will implement those needs, which will ultimately address all of our student needs, but we do have to plan an exit strategy for that, or at the end of the day, re-envision the type of services that we are providing to our students. Why? Because when you take $80 million of programs that you're going to implement, not you, but the district is going to implement with these dollars, those dollars will expire. And so we will have to have a conversation at some point on how we are going to address the loss of those one-time dollars. And I look at it from this perspective, and this is the planning slide. You have the one-time dollars and the ongoing dollars. The ongoing dollars has a road that keeps going, and you could address those needs as far as you can see. But with the one-time approach, you know that at the end of the day, we are not going to receive $80 million every year to maintain whatever programs that we implement. But we will have to re-envision or figure out how we are going to afford the programs that we find that are most useful for us, that we could ultimately impact student learning. Oh. And that's it.
Tricia Pierce, do you have any questions?
Well, I have thank you for that, the good visuals and the slides. Thank you for the good visuals and the slide presentation. Of course, when I get my packet, I looked at your narrative and then the 152 page, but I did find some numbers I could look at on page 20 of the large financial report, somewhat of a summary. Okay. So, and maybe some of this is the one time. I was wondering on the page 20, it indicates 60 million restricted funds. And it might be in this, how soon do they have to be spent, 60 million that's left for that?
So, good question. Now, that 60 million is made up of a combination of all the categoricals that you could think of part of the restricted program. Now, they all have different spending requirements. The ESSER 2, which is the funds that we have allocated to schools, and we showed in the previous slide there was a balance of 13.2 million that we have yet to figure of how we are going to, 13.5, excuse me, yeah, on how to spend. I didn't put the timeline on when those funds end. But those funds, if I recall, end in the summer, September 30th, 2023. So those have a 2-year and a summer window of how to spend those dollars. And then when you look at, I mean, they all just have different requirements. If you're talking, I mean, that's just an amalgamation of so many different funds.
Okay, so that 60 million is different ones that expire over a certain number.
They all have different, I mean, we'll have a list of 40, yeah, 50 programs in there, but they all just consolidate into the restricted side.
And they're all planned out for that far too, about what they're going to be used for yet or not?
So, yes. So pretty much, I mean, you have Title I in there, you have Title II in there. All of those have budgets planned for expenditures. They have timelines. They have limitations on carryover. So there's so many different components. Honestly, we could have a conversation and talk about all the different components that go into that the whole evening if we wanted to go into that level of detail. And that would be great for me because that's my department, but I doubt that will entertain the rest of the board.
I guess it's the same question with the 11 million other commitments. What does that mean when it says other commitments?
So the $11 million commitments is the district at one time when we received a huge amount of money due to mandated cost reimbursements. The board dedicated those dollars and committed them through formal board action. And that probably happened way before my time, maybe 2011. Okay. When those dollars were really coming in at some point, because every district was getting them throughout the state. Now, what happens is the board commits those for a specific purpose, and the purposes for this district was for textbook adoptions and technology. Now, we've supplemented that with other needs through the budget, but the board ultimately would have to uncommit that. So things like the textbook adoptions, at the end of the day, what happens is if we're talking about the next year and the board wants to do a textbook adoption, we would uncommit a portion of those funds for the textbook adoption. So if the textbook adoption costs $1 million, that committed balance will now show 10.
Okay, and are there set years that the state requires certain adoptions? Do we know them ahead of time, or?
That, I'm sure Kelly probably can answer that better than I can.
I can talk from back here. Yes, we actually do have textbook adoptions planned for several years out for budgeting purposes, looking at when different adoptions are made available by the state and when our current editions were last updated. So both of those play into those timelines.
Okay, so that's pretty much committed to that type of thing. Would it be the technology too, after these one-time funds, we've updated everything past 2015, older than 2015, would we, in the next few years, need to do that kind of thing again because of the way they're handled with students? And I mean, they get a lot of wear and tear and...
Yes, so do we have a plan to address ultimately all the aging equipment? We have a portion of dollars dedicated, I believe, in our LCAP for that purpose. I think it's in the tune of 2 million, maybe?
We refresh our student devices, 1/6 of them every single year.
Oh, okay, so on
Yep.
a rotating
We have,
basis.
yeah, exactly. So none of them go end of life at the same time. They're still available for updates for things like testing and things like that.
And
And unlike I've heard in some other districts, we were able to service all the children with access with the MiFis and that kind of thing this year. And do we have to buy, I mean, how does it work with a family with 3 or 4 kids? Are they able to access that on one MiFi, or do we need to, we have a shortage of that at all, or we don't have any problem with them getting access to the web?
So, right. We don't have a shortage of devices, MiFi devices. We did with some of the funding that was available to us, and Mr. Aquino mentioned it earlier, in our families where there are multiple students in a home, we purchased additional MiFi devices that were able to support multiple students in one location.
Okay, okay. And my last question is the 36 million unassigned, unappropriated. What is that planned for, or is that still in the planning stage, or what kind of things are those?
So that is exactly what it's called. It's unassigned. So
Unassigned.
we don't have a budget for them at all for any particular purpose. But the trick is that you can't look at those in silos in one year. The state adopted AB 1200, which is Assembly Bill 1200 back in, I think, 1990, that requires districts to not only look at the current year, but 2 subsequent years. So at the end of the day, that unassigned, unappropriated, you could see if we are deficit spending at the end of the day, that also dwindles down. So it's basically the fund balance that isn't committed. Because in the fund balance, we have things like petty cash, it's a very small amount. We have our inventory, prepaid items. We have the committed balance that you talked about, the 11 million, and our reserve for economic uncertainty, which we are required to maintain a positive certification of about $11 million.
That 11 million, is that 3% or what percent is that?
11 million is approximately 3% in the second subsequent year. Now, if you were to ask me what is your average 2-month payroll, and that's kind of the recommendation if you look at from good business practices, and I believe it's in the tune of somewhere in the 40-something million.
40 million.
40-something million. I think it's 44 million, something like that.
2 months payroll. Okay, because when you look at the one and it has such a big balance, I was just wondering, like, where is it all planning for? But I can see it's still in the works. And then plus the other 2 types of funding that are coming in for the COVID type stuff was not able to be included in there. So I don't know, is there another update again after all that gets included, or is this the only other update you do before final?
So we're going to do another budget. It's part of our estimated actuals. Now, the in-person grant and the expanded learning opportunities, at the end of the day, it is a categorical program. So even if those dollars fell out to the budget, it becomes a reserve restricted.
Right.
And so it can only be used on whatever the intended purposes that were outlined as far as the bill or whatever it was associated with the award.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's a lot of numbers, really, and complicated. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jordan. Being married to a CPA and working in a CPA firm, I appreciate what you delivered to us. And, I try to tell people when you get the one-time funds, that's all good and fine, but you have to keep in mind you have ongoing expenses, and it's kind of like if you or I had, somebody gave us $5,000. That's great for this year, but you can't take the $5,000 and now buy something that's going to have reoccurring expenses, and now next year, or the year after that, all of a sudden you don't have any money because that was a one-time slush fund that you got. And that's kind of what the state is doing. in the respect with all these grants, which is wonderful. But we don't know how long, if I'm correct, that some of our expenses are going to be reoccurring, learning loss. And learning loss is not going to end in 2 years from now. And all of a sudden, we'll say, we're okay, we don't need summer school anymore, we don't need to work on those students. So that's a big concern of mine. I would like you to go into briefly, and I think you already did already, what it really looks like on that next year out that we're talking about, because we're going to have to address that fourth year, that year that we're not showing, so the 23-24 year. That this, I want the public to understand this is a growing number. This net change is going to be a growing negative number that we're looking at, correct?
Yes, because when you look at 22-23, now that comes with a caveat that we receive a 1 point something COLA. So if we receive something better, great. If we decline in enrollment, bad, because that number will also, that deficit will grow. Now the 22-23 year strips the budget of everything associated with these reprieve dollars, if you will. And so that is really the true district look with regards to the funding that we get under LCFF and our expenditures that we tied to personnel and all other things. And so that deficit will continue, and the board will see what that fourth year is going to look like very shortly when we present the adopted budget come next 4 months.
And isn't it correct that the state of California, in all their glory, as much as they're giving us extra money, they're giving us a deferral, aren't they? They aren't going to pay their bill on time, correct, this year?
So they're still discussing the pay downs of the deferrals, and with the Biden dollars and the estimate that I provided of, you know, whatever that dollar amount was, 50 some odd million, there is still conversation as to how much they're going to actually use to pay down some of those deferrals, because the deferrals were one-time in nature, and so is the funding from the federal government. But I believe also the feds have a requirement on the states that they have to spend a certain amount for schools. So it's going to, you know, this is just our preliminary. I'm not sure what we're actually going to end up getting, but there's a lot of talk about that at the state.
And unfortunately, if history repeats itself, we could end up getting in one of those snags where we did about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I should say, where we were getting hit with deferrals and they were postponing our payments that they needed to pay us, and then we ended up having to get loans to cover the amount because we ran out of money, basically.
And that is the purpose for having the required reserve and a fund balance, because it helps pay for those things without having to go out to borrow.
Again, I want to thank you. I love that we're able to do certain things with the added funds that we have, but again, it concerns me also about the STRS and the PERS. And you see that it's getting, our OPEB balance keeps on getting higher and higher, so that's a big concern of mine as well, that we have this retirement that is growing. So that's a concern of mine. But great job, and you've always kept us in the black, and I hope we continue to do that, and hopefully you'll do magic so that 22-23 will not be red, it will be black. So I believe in you. Thank you so much.
Linda Porras, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Jordan, and I appreciate all of your detailed work, you and your staff, and really appreciate the fact that you've, like Wendy says, worked your magic and not lost any jobs during this time of the pandemic. We really do appreciate that, you know, for staff and everyone. So thank you so much.
Anna Conover.
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions I might have had been answered. I do want to, on page 14, or slide 14, I guess, with the money coming through the American Rescue Plan Act, of course, we don't know when or if we'll get that, but I am glad to see that mental health is one of the priorities. And I guess as we get closer and we do get that money, we'll be able to figure out exactly what will be provided under that heading there. Okay. I'm glad just to that it's there. Thank you.
I don't have any questions, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we don't have any public hearings. One, which is the COVID response. Mr. Bailey?
Absolutely, and while I have the chance, thank you, Jordan, for the presentation. I'd just like to point out that this year was quite an abnormal year when it comes to funding. We're used to certain streams of funding, and this came in waves and ripples, and it quite frankly affected a lot of people, not only in business and finance, but payroll, warehousing, getting all the physical assets out to the schools, purchasing, custodial, the list goes on. So an abnormal year for sure. All right, COVID update, one of our fixed items on the agenda. We heard the great news today, obviously, that we're moving into the red officially tomorrow. Before I get to that, I just want to say that this week started off in a most positive way. It was a really good day for Desert Sands, but a really great day for Desert Sands students pre-K through 5 as we got them back into buildings, those that wanted to be there, and that's approximately about 60% of our students district-wide. I started the day off at Franklin Elementary School, and since then I've visited every elementary site, so I finished my 20th visit maybe 3 hours ago. And I can say it's great. It was an infusion that I needed, and I think a lot of our educators needed to experience having the kids back in the room. So I can't see their smiles, but you can feel their smiles. So that cohort A finished their 2 days for this week today, and now everyone will be online tomorrow, Wednesday, and then come back to cohort B Thursday, Friday. So for the teachers in the classrooms and the principals at the sites, the bus drivers and so forth, they're actually going to experience a new school year the second time this year, the second time this week. It gets a little confusing, but again, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful beginning of hybrid instruction. With that said, building on the board's motion most recent to bring back our pre-K through 5 as soon as possible as permitted under the incentive grant and with compliance of the COVID safety plan that was required at that time to do the early on-ramp. We brought our kids back again Monday, March 15th, and then the board did make a motion and approved that motion to bring back our 6 through 12 when we moved into what is really known as the red tier as permissible under California Public Health Guidelines. So we are at the point now at a 6.1 adjusted case rate per 100,000, which is really, really favorable news, and a 3.7% positivity rate, which is even better in the county. And this tees us up for what I'm recommending is a March 29th return of grades 6 through 12, based on your most recent motion. So that's March 29, grades 6 through 12. And we can't wait. All right, so we'll move on with additional COVID updates. I'm going to actually defer now to Dr. Kelly Mae Vollmer, Education Services Assistant Superintendent. And by the way, that March 29 gives us 1 full week of a hybrid experience before that week that follows, which is spring break.
So good evening. I want to just start before I give you an update by echoing what Superintendent Bailey already mentioned. It was amazing to be out on campuses yesterday, and I really just want to express my gratitude to all the employees across Desert Sands. I mean, everyone worked so hard. There were staff from all over. Our high schools sent staff, middle schools sent staff. The departments here all around the district sent staff to the elementaries to support them on that first day and bring those students back. But just in addition to that, all of our directors and administrators and managers and classified staff and certificated staff worked so hard, and it was an amazing, amazing day. Probably one of the highlights for me of the day. I was at Oliphant in the morning, and the cutest little kindergartner says to me, I haven't been here, and so I'm very confused. And I said, that is understandable, but by the end of the day, you're gonna not be confused anymore. And then literally seconds after that, she recognized from a distance her teacher that she'd met during the transition week that we had, and just took off running, arms wide open. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. So I just appreciate all of the staff across the district and all the work that they did to get our students back in classes. So wanted to start with that. And then really the update I have for you tonight is an update on sports in Desert Sands. And as I reported at the last board meeting with Laura Fisher, California Department of Public Health updated their youth sports guidance documents. If you'll remember, we talked at that time about allowing for outdoor high and moderate contact sports to be played in those least restrictive tiers as long as we were adhering to the additional requirements. So since our last board meeting, the document has been updated twice since then. So the first update allowed for any team sport, including indoor sports, so different than last time. Now they're adding indoor sports in, to return to competition and contact practice if the team adheres to additional requirements. So like the high and moderate contact, there's additional items that are required, and these are even above and beyond what we heard during the last presentation. So I'll just go through them really quickly. There obviously are certain testing requirements that they're calling for. In addition, each school has to write a return to play safety plan. So that has to be put into place. They have to have a site-specific facilities COVID-19 prevention plan as it pertains to sports, and designate people responsible for any COVID-19 concerns as they pertain to athletics. They also have to have certain controls in place over self-screening, making sure that people are doing the self-screening. They have to commit to adhering to appropriate isolation and quarantine procedures if they're necessary. And there are additional travel guidelines that require the team to remain in the cohort and not mix with the local teams or the host community. So some additional guidelines came with that, and all of our athletic directors are currently working, especially to get those plans in place that I mentioned. So they're working on those this week. The second update since our last board meeting came today. And that second update indicated that sideline cheer, band, drumline, or any other supporting groups are not allowed at the sporting events at this time. That came out just today. However, we will be moving forward with competitive cheer, which is allowed in the red as halftime performances. So we will be having that take place. And then just a final update, additional sports now that we're in the red, as Mr. Bailey mentioned, that are allowed without any additional guidance. So if you'll remember from several updates ago, there was a list of sports that are allowed in each colored tier without any additional guidance. And some of those sports would be baseball, field hockey, softball, doubles tennis, and outdoor volleyball. So those in the red are allowed without the additional guidance. And that's my update. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Aquino from Business Services to come back up and give us any updates he may have. And while we're on that topic, I failed to mention that while I was at Ben Franklin Elementary School, a young third grader jumped out of a car, came up, introduced herself, and the Desert Sun actually captured the quote in the newspaper. We appreciate that coverage from Chad Powers, and I think the photographer's name was Collins. The young lady says to me, "This is the best day of my life."
Just to piggyback on that note, my son went to school the last 2 days. He's in cohort A, and first thing he said to me when I got home was, "I felt like it was just an hour and school was over." He was super excited, so really happy for him. As far as COVID updates go, we are still, I just want to, as a service announcement almost, please, if you need meals, we are providing meals 7 days a week worth of meals on Wednesday for pickup. And with the start of school, we saw transportation. There wasn't a lot of attendees on the bus. I think that's pretty typical with regard to the first day of school. Parents are bringing their students. But as we open up, I think that's also going to alleviate some of the traffic. So as most people start riding the bus, it's also going to free up a lot of the cars. So that's one thing that, as far as a COVID update, but we have all of the deliveries with regards to, as I mentioned earlier, PPE, HEPA filters. The final delivery will be sent this Friday to schools. We have the ionizers. I think it's about 3 schools that we are in the process of completing. We'll have those completed. Those are really for the schools that don't have any in-person instruction right now. And I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I stand corrected, it was Vicki Connor, the photographer, that gets credit for that front page photo of the Benjamin Franklin student. On that, let's move over to Laura Fisher, Assistant Superintendent, Student Support Services.
All right, we'll just continue the good news. As I always do every board meeting in regards to our COVID update for employees, we've had 0 employees with positive COVID in the last 2 weeks since the last meeting, and 1 athlete. So it's very different than what we used to update you with at board meetings. And to continue on even better, we had an excellent, in collaboration with Walgreens, vaccine clinic on Saturday, and provided hundreds of Johnson & Johnson vaccines to Desert Sands staff, and then we're able to open it up by appointment to their family and friends that fit the tier criteria, and open it up to our neighboring districts. And as the general manager of Walgreens was sharing with me, because we found out on Thursday he had this for us and got it planned by Saturday, and we all agree, he said, I just want to get as many shots in arms as we can, because that'll continue to improve the health in the community, both medical health and financial health. So it was a great vaccine clinic. We went from 8 to 4:30, and we saw a lot of people. So it was very exciting. So the updates to our COVID safety plan that I've talked to you quite a bit about in the last few meetings. As you know, ours was approved, so we were able to, once we reached under 25, start planning for our pre-K through 5 opening. So as now that we're in the red, and we're looking at, as Mr. Bailey said, opening up middle school and high school, because this document, as you can imagine, as guidance continues to change, that document will continue to change, because we want to make sure that we have the most updated guidance included in our COVID safety plan. What has changed is it no longer has to go through the approval process, because that was only when we were at the reopening plans waiting for under 25. So the guidance and changes will be done per public health changes. And so one of the first changes, obviously, since we're looking at secondary sites opening, is that plan was primarily targeted for elementary. So you'll see some changes that it more appropriately applies to secondary sites. And then some of the other ones, the quarantine, again, has changed to 10 days. It used to be 10 days and then 4 days with a surgical mask and all of that, but it's 10 days. And then, of course, the mask can be whatever, face covering, whatever you want to wear, but as we always do, continuing monitoring symptoms. So that changed with the quarantine. And another thing, as we're increasing our vaccinated employees and people in general, if you've been vaccinated and it's been 14 days since either your second dose or your 1 Johnson & Johnson dose, those people no longer have to be quarantined if they're considered a close contact. So all these changes you'll see quickly in the safety plan as we're changing that. And one of the big changes that will affect all schools, and we had planned for elementary, but with the passage of AB 86, it came out a few days ago that supersedes the testing cadence that's included in the plan now in regards to testing, the asymptomatic testing at the school sites. Because when we got into the purple and red, I knew we could go to at least every other week. But we also heard concerns from parents and teachers, and we had concerns, rightly so, to have to do that at schools and take away from the instructional time for students. So now with the passage of AB 86, we will continue to provide that testing if parents are wanting their students tested, but on a Wednesday, so it won't interfere with any of the cohorts in school, and we'll be doing it here at the district office. So if links will be going out from your principals. If you're interested, this is, of course, free of charge, and you can bring your child up for a COVID test. Now, under Cal OSHA, that is something that we're continuing to be required to provide to employees if they desire, and that will be included in the Wednesday clinic. So there's more details coming out on that, but that is a significant change in the COVID safety plan than what we had earlier. And then, as Dr. Vollmer was talking about with the youth sports guidance, that testing doesn't change in regards to the passage of AB 86. It's very different. So as Dr. Vollmer was talking about for our basketball and some of the other sports, it is more aligned with collegiate testing. So we have, which the board, there's a contract this evening for a new vendor coming in that's very familiar with both collegiate and K-12. And it's called Living Fit Nation. And they will be coming in providing both the asymptomatic testing that will be offered at the district and all of our sports. And they're very used to the cadence and the beginning testing and then the frequency that has to be done before each competition. So it is a saliva test instead of the nasal swab. And I think, well, it depends. Some people like that better than the nasal swab. But so we've already set it up. They're meeting with all the ADs and high school principals tomorrow to look at schedules. So that will be in exact guidance with public health. And I think, yep, that's it for this evening. Thank you.
Okay,
Dr. Salazar.
I'm always last. That's all right. I can rest and relax. Yeah, alphabetical, I got it. So now that the elementary hybrid instruction has begun, personnel is able to focus on our secondary teachers and the administrators and helping them with their staffing plans. It's a little simpler process because master schedules at secondary schools are so complicated that we didn't reform the courses and teachers like we did with the elementary. So all the middle and high school teachers are keeping their same kids. So that's going to be a simpler process. And they're going to be engaging in the simultaneous teaching. So they've got their hybrid students in front of them and their distance students at the same time. And we're just working on, keeping a healthy subpool and making sure that everybody has enough people on campus that they need. Right now it looks good. And we are looking forward to enjoying our visits to supporting the sites during their first week of hybrid like we have with the elementary schools this week. Hopefully on the 29th. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. That's it for the updates. Any questions, comments?
Well, we've had these COVID updates going all along since this started, and they're getting shorter and shorter, which is nice. I mean, we're down to, well, everything's done, and we're pretty much moving along. So it's good to hear. I'm really happy to hear about the sports end of it for the kids, to get these last couple months for those kids that are really looking forward to that, especially the seniors. And also the fact that we don't have to be testing everybody, but the people that want to get tested could be tested, and as we get more and more people vaccinated. Other than that, I think everything's looking good, finally.
Thank you so much. As far as the band and sideline cheer, Dr. Vollmer, is that, it's not allowed, is that unique to California? I mean, I'm just curious, or is that something that's being done across the nation?
I don't know across the nation. I do know that that particular guidance came straight from California Department of Public Health.
Yeah, if you could do me a favor, and in our next update that we get on Friday, if you can look into that. I'm curious if that's something that's unique to California, because I'm hearing in other states that cheerleaders are there and band is there in high school, but I might be wrong. So
no, I think that that's probably true across the U.S. There's definitely that is happening in some places.
Mr. Aquino, Oh, you're over there, back in the back. You said you're having meals on Wednesday, 7 days of meals. Do you see that bumping as we get closer to the summer again, that number bumping and us having to provide more meals like we were doing on the onset of COVID, or no? You think that we've reached a plateau at this point?
As far as participation or?
Yeah, and giving out meals.
Well, now typically we've provided meals over the summer times. It's just now a very well-known program due to the pandemic. But I anticipate us doing that and continuing to do that over the summertime. The state has provided a waiver all the way up to, I believe, September 30th,
Okay.
2021.
Okay.
So we will continue to provide meals at the same level. Now, the participation, I'm not sure what that will ultimately look like, but we want to make sure that we're affording all our students the opportunity.
Exactly, and it's good to hear that the state will be offering a waiver. Dr. Fisher, great news. Love to see that no employees have gotten the COVID and all the work that you've been putting together for the vaccines and everything. You mentioned the plan on the it's like a fluid plan right now. Is that plan then being, I'm assuming, I know that it's on our website. Is that changing in fluidity on our website as well, or is it staying the same the way it, do you understand what I'm saying?
No, it will be changed on the website, and we probably will put updated dates on it so that you'll know. But each update, we will make those after tonight.
Excellent. So our parents that are listening in and also here, and the staff as well, they can go in and look at that and see that what the latest changes have been to the plan.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely.
Perfect. And everything else looks good. And, Dr. Salazar, you mentioned about middle high schools, how it's going to be a little easier. I do have a question because you talked about the teaching, they're not going to be switching. What happens if a teacher is teaching a subject and they don't want to be in the classroom and they want to be distant learning? How will that affect the students that are hybrid? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yes.
Are we going to then have something different? How is that done?
No, we've been able to accommodate them, but they're going to be live streaming. I call it reverse streaming their instruction from a remote location into the classroom with a substitute in the classroom to turn on and off the LFD, the technology, and make sure that the students are staying 6 feet.
So there is a teacher in the classroom that will be kind of the aide to the teacher. Okay, terrific. All right, thank you so much.
Linda Porras.
I just have to say, it's so exciting to be at this meeting and hearing all the wonderful reports on the light at the end of the tunnel's here. It's coming. So super excited. You guys have just done a fantastic job with everything. I mean, the reports are amazing, and it's so exciting to hear about the kids and being happy about being in the classroom. It just, brings tears to my eyes because it's great, great news. I can't wait for us to be back 5 days a week, man. It's just going to be awesome. So it's wonderful to see the buses on the road again and like we're going back to school. So anyway, great job, everybody. And I'm just looking forward to better and better days. So thank you so much.
Anna Conover.
I just had a question for Dr. May Volmer. You mentioned the return to play safety plan. Is that something that the schools are doing, or is that something that we have to do as a district? And when you said it would have to be approved, who will it have to be approved by? Is that the county and the state, or?
So it's actually, it just has to be adopted, not approved. Okay. So they have to come with, so it doesn't have to be submitted. They're basically following the template of the California Department of Public Health. So the athletic directors are working on it together. So there will be one for each school for those slight variances, but really they'll be very similar across the board.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's all.
Okay, I don't have any questions, so we'll move into public comment, and I'll turn it back over to Anna Conover.
Communications from the floor. In accordance with bylaws of the board 9323, time is reserved for oral communications by members of the Board of Education or by citizens present. Citizens wishing to be heard on agenda items shall have a 3-minute limit and shall indicate their intentions at this time. In accordance with the law, decisions of the board cannot be made on any matter not previously published before the board meeting as indicated in bylaws of the board 9323.2. I do not have any online submissions. So first is Trina Gonzalez Alisi.
Good evening, Cabinet and Board, and all those in attendance. Anyone who works in education knows that teachers like themes. This is my Red Tier Tuesday theme, so I think we should make that an annual event. Excited to be able to offer new opportunities. I also was at school sites yesterday. Yeah, the days just blend together. I was at school sites yesterday to welcome students back. I was at Franklin, I visited Adams, and then I also went over to Truman. And it was a surreal experience seeing students arrive with new backpacks and new shoes in March. It was just really weird. But I echoed the comments that everybody else made. They were just so excited to be there, taking selfies in front of their school signs. It was exciting to be part of that. I want to thank the board and the cabinet for your vision and the cautious path to allow us to in-person instruction. Because we were very intentional in our approach, we're now able to offer more and more in-person opportunities. If we would have rushed anything before now, we may not have even been afforded this opportunity at all. So by going cautiously and slowly and deliberately and intentionally, now we're able to offer in-person experiences. Finally, DSTA would like to thank the Cabinet and Board for the transition to hybrid stipend, to recognize and appreciate the tremendous amount of work done by all of the Desert Sands employees over the last year. It took every single one of us doing our part to get us to where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicholas Rose.
Okay, see if that will stay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board and members of cabinet. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Assistant Superintendent Laura Fisher and the SUPS office for all the email notifications about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine clinic. I think Adriana sent out like 5 emails in the course of Friday letting people know. So, I mean, that was awesome. We tried to spread the word. I was one of the many employees who participated, and I thought everything just went so smoothly. The line got a little long when I showed up, but everybody was just kind of excited and happy to do it. I also wanted to echo Mr. Bailey and just give a shout out to some of our 12-month classified employees who, even though we've gone back to hybrid, these are the folks that have been there just every single day this whole year, that our warehouse department, purchasing department, for all the PPE supplies, all the deliveries that have gone out to all our elementary schools. Talking to Mr. Aquino this past few weeks, just the sheer volume of all the face shields with drapes, masks, all of it that was ordered, watching all the plexiglass get put up on the desks, just the logistics puzzle that had to be solved by all those departments is just amazing. And I wanted to shout out my coworkers in fiscal services, our payroll specialists, our accounts payable that have just been, paying salaries, paying the bills, that a lot of times these are kind of the unsung folks that are showing up every day, just making sure, the wheels are greased, that the district and everything is happening. I wanted to echo, too, just the positivity of the drop-offs. I have my little 4-year-old doing the California State Preschool and, over at Adams, so the little Adams ants, dots were spread out. Everybody had their masks. Everybody was on the dots. It was awesome. And then my son is over at Reagan Elementary, and same thing. Just everything went so smoothly. And teachers and everyone were so excited. So that was just amazing. And just lastly, I wanted to mention for mitigating learning loss, and as we move forward and look at these one-time dollars, certificated staff have received a lot of extra trainings for tutoring and for working online. And I would just kind of ask the board to look at paraeducators as a workforce that could get some extra duty training, can pull students out for some one-on-one intervention, and that, you know, we have a little over 300 paraeducators. That's just a good workforce that can take advantage of some of this one-time money to help our students. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have Matt Lathrop.
Good evening. My name is Matt Lathrop. I'm from here in the Valley. My wife and I both were born and raised here. We went to school here. We both graduated DSUSD schools, including her family and the rest of my family. A little bit on my agenda today is I want to talk about mental health of students. First, before we get there, I want to kind of echo some stuff that was said by this gentleman. I've heard stories of bus drivers that are wiping tables down. I've heard stories of some amazing teachers behind the camera who are just doing extra work. Some of them are just in tears sometimes dealing with some of these kids. Maintenance crews, security officers. I mean, these are people that are still going through this pandemic that can't get out of it. That being said, I mean, as much as I love all these happy thoughts and feelings about going back to school and all this COVID stuff, it's just not that happy. It's really not. And unfortunately, there's a doctor in Texas, Dr. Wagner, who's a professor and chair of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Services. Since COVID, student-aged children, suicide is up 178%. That's absolutely miserable. 178% since COVID throughout the nation. Additionally, 43.7%, these kids are up in depression and anxiety. And I'm talking about they're clinically diagnosed, 43.7%. As we're moving, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, a little wild about this. I don't usually speak, but I also liked the story mountain that was set up earlier. The visual. That story mountain is nice. The problem is there's another mountain behind it, and that's the student health. We may crest the peak of that story mountain, but the mountain behind it that these kids are now being involved in, that we're going to have to deal with, is the mental health. And it's catastrophic. We have to get these children, whose parents are willing to accept it, to go back to school 5 days a week full time. I know about the guidelines, not the mandates, but the guidelines. I also appreciate some of the questions that were asked earlier about other states. I think we should really look at that because these guidelines are completely screwed sometimes because of bureaucrats and, I'm sorry to say it, but corrupt bully unions, and that includes the teachers union. And that being said, there was a ruling on Monday from a San Diego judge that blocks any school in California or any government in California from limiting the way we reopen schools. It's literally up to you guys. So I want you guys to sit here and think, as voted members, on what's about to happen to our children based off of your decision. Will more kids kill themselves? Will more kids get active into drugs? Are what we're doing for COVID, is that worth, the health that we're trying to cover, is that worth risking their lives over? I mean, I get it, people are dying from COVID, but now we have a bigger tragedy on our hands that COVID is small compared to. Just think about that when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Catherine Silvera.
Shorter person, sorry. So let's not forget what caused last year to happen, an unrelenting virus that spread across our valley like wildfire. A year later, we are slowly putting together the pieces to avoid another fire while reintroducing in-person education. Now we must be proactive, not reactive. It is time to take a step back and make sure that both of our learning models are equitable to teachers, students, and the community. Now, my children are in hybrid and cohort A, so they experienced all the emotions described here today, but they were only part of the 60%. There are 40% of your students that are still in distance learning model. They need this model for whatever reason they have, but they need this model. That's 4 out of 10 of your students that still need your guidance and help. We want to be able to provide an equitable education across all models, but we can't do this if we just blatantly ignore the distance learning model. While we celebrate this in-person celebration, we must also support the teachers and students in this distance learning model. Many teachers are teaching new grade levels, taking last week to create new lesson plans from scratch. Most now have class sizes that are unimaginable. We're talking the second grade class that I'm helping with has 35 students in it. Studies and common sense have told us that learning is stifled and slowed the more students you cram into a classroom. It appears that this district has forgotten this fact and showed that they consider this learning model not worthy of that award-winning standards that it used to have. This sounds like an impossible, daunting task, yet your teachers working through the night to make sure every student is heard, listened to, and educated. You should be asking yourselves, how can you help? Even having an aide or para-educator in each of these virtual classrooms in the elementary setting can have a big impact. I co-host most days of the week for my second grader's old second grade teacher. Her class size is increased by 10 students. If physically, you can't see them all in one Zoom. She needs another person just in the room to make sure that we can see all the hands raised, manage that chat to make sure they have any questions, and even small group help. In the face of it all, the teachers have risen to the challenge. This year, teachers were villainized, scapegoated, harassed, called lazy, and their expertise diminished publicly. However, all of the success this year has been on the backs of our teachers and our staff. Teachers across the district has worked countless hours, non-contracted, non-paid times to get their rooms ready. They have welcomed new students in their class. Teachers have made sure that they are safe, their students are safe, and the community is safe. They have rewritten their lesson plans again this year to accommodate these new learning models. What this year has shown is just how amazing our district educators are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Faustina Sevilla.
Good evening, everyone. I was not gonna come tonight. I decided, after my last speech that I was gonna take a break and not come in, but based on Mr. Griffith addressing my comment directly, I felt the need to come today because I guess I was not clear enough during my first speech as to the reason why I'm here. I am not here for myself. I am here for those parents that do not know the language and need the help. So although you gave me guidance as to how to find the information about the expenses, I appreciate it, but you need to be transparent to those parents that don't know how to use a computer, don't have a computer to utilize, don't know the language. So I am very appreciative that you guys are reopening for the little ones, and the 6 to 12 are gonna come. However, I'm sorry to say this, but hybrid sucks. Zoom in a room sucks. I have no idea why this is the only profession in which the employee gets to select if they're gonna go to work in person, which is totally unacceptable. And every time I hear comments, I can't help but think that the one on the way is the person behind me, the union. Because if we're willing to put substitute teachers in place of an educator, then are we really trying to save lives? Are the teachers the only ones that matter? I 100% back up the educators. Now, the educators to me are those that value their profession, not those that were creating this sense of, oh, parents want a babysitter. No, we're not looking for a babysitter. We're looking for you to do your job. So at the end of the day, that's what we want. As a parent, my child is not struggling, they're fine, but I'm here for those other parents that need the schools to reopen 5 days a week, full time. Like I said before, hybrid sucks. And for a teacher to be able to say, I'm not gonna go into a room when you guys are putting safety measures in place, it's unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kimberly Hetherington.
Hello, good evening. First off, I want to say how awesome my son did yesterday and today, to the point that I did not have to struggle to get him out of the house, which has been impossible for the last year. And he stayed till 5:15 each day at the YMCA. So thank you very much. Amelia Earhart has been amazing. On another note, so I feel like that song from ABBA, you know, the money, money, money song? It's raining money. Anyone that chooses to look, even with the slightest of surface investigating, can find answers. I'm so happy that a trustee board member helped us further see it's all publicly accessible information. I, as a community tax-paying member, have questions about one-time slush funds and state grants. Now that we have safety fully in place, I hope that all the district's teachers will have support for supplies for their classrooms included within whatever may be left to spend in that budget. EdSource.org reflects our district total to be $114 million, to be directed to what often comes out of a loving and caring teacher's pocket. That's not included in their salary. How do you think people who have had no income feel about all of this show of MOU for COVID funds to go to bonuses and stipends when this money should be going to get our children back to the classrooms fully so that students like my son can meet their free appropriate public schools education and his IEP in brick and mortar, where it's lawfully to be assessed, met, and upheld? We were being told that all of this government money was needed for schools to open with safety precautions. Many parents knew this wasn't true since half the country's schools were already open full-time. Like me, parents were furious, especially since none of the district's plans indicated to open full-time this school year, even within the windfall. They have at best 10 hours per week, and often the teacher is teaching students on Zoom at the same time. What's being forgotten in these conversations that however hard teachers have been working, parents have been working so much harder. Many quit their jobs. Some parents can't help their kids with school because of their work, and their kids have fallen behind. Parents are going into debt to pay for private schools since their public schools aren't open. Families and kids especially have been the ones who have made the largest sacrifices. This money was allocated to get students back in the classroom full-time and to curb learning loss. Once the school can get all the kids that so desperately need it back in the classroom for a real in-person education full-time, and we have the program set up for summer or extended learning, then we can talk about all the rest of it. Let's not forget that some of us, the lowest wage staff like food service workers and special education aides, have been in person since the fall. If anyone deserves a hero bonus, it's the staff and select teachers who have been back in person, not the teacher refusing to come back to the classroom while getting the vaccine. It's more than bad optics. It's immoral and a complete failure for our education model in California. Thank you.
Thank you, that's all. That is all the comments.
All right. We'll now move into board and superintendent comments. Tricia Pierce.
Well, I wanted to welcome Alex Salcido as our new board member, and he had to go off to an event with his grandmother, so he was short-lived here, but I do welcome him and his participation. And I love seeing the See Something, Say Something posters for all those grade levels. It reminds me of the drug week ones we would do and other ones, and I love to see the kids get involved in getting that message across. I also enjoyed seeing the Skills USA, all the training that these kids are doing. I didn't realize that all of these crafts and skills were even taking place as much in the programs, and that they're going on to the state levels. As I said, I had my questions on the funding report, and it is a large report in order to take that in and really understand it, but once it's updated, maybe I'll get to study it more. But one thing I was concerned with is, I understand about the competitive cheer being allowed, but the sideline cheer and the drum line and band and the dance team, I had a member contact all of us board members, or maybe she was just in my trustee area, anyway, about the amount of money they've put into their uniforms and their participation to be out there. And I just still don't understand as a person the distance that they can maintain to do these things, the flag twirlers and the flag team and so forth, that they could still get a part of participation in either halftime or sideline and be distanced in some way and still be safe. And many of them have coaches and, you know, go with the CIF rules and so forth. So I'm hoping, and I don't know what level that can come in, but I'm hoping that's coming pretty quick to give these kids a chance to participate in this school year. I also was amazed at Mr. Aquino's report with all the deliveries that have been made, and the thanks to all the classified staff, as many people mentioned, that have been keeping this place going and sometimes in the background. It's just amazing that they're always there, and different work classifications pitching in with other areas in order to get everything done. That's what people do when we come together. Also, the report of no employees getting COVID in 2 weeks was amazing, and I love to see these numbers dropping, and that there were 520 shots given at Walgreens vaccine clinic that was set up instantaneously, so that was amazing. And other thing, I am concerned with the mental health of students. This whole learning model we've been in the past year affects kids differently. We have children like my grandson who's okay with being at home now that he's done it this long, and he's not sure he wanted to go back, you know, even though his school is also open. And so there are kids that take this differently, and we need to, I know other people have spoken about the need for counselors. We have districts in our California that don't even have counselors at elementary, believe it or not. But we are fortunate to have a counselor at every school, and depending on the size of the school, we even have our SAP team that supplements it and so forth. So we have the counselors, and we're really grateful for that. But because of these times, and I liked Ms. Conover's comment, you know, would we have some of these extra funds, there may be group things we could do with kids, or, you know, online Zoom counseling, individual counseling, anything. And I'm sure some of this is going on. As soon as teachers notice kids that are in need, probably they bring it to someone's attention. I mean, I don't hear all of this, but I'm imagining that some people are reaching out and trying to get to some of these kids, but we can't do too much. We have to, you know, really, really help those kids over this hardship. Other than that, I think I just appreciate this coming to this point in the March 29th opening. I can't wait to visit those schools and see. I went to Franklin, Truman, and Earhart on Monday, and now I want to go on Thursday to some other schools to see their openings. But to go in the class and see these little kids, as everybody said, the emotions and their happiness to be there. One teacher did mention, well, they're going to have to build up their endurance to keep these masks on, because I don't think they've had masks on to go to the store or to run an errand or something with their parents, but for them to keep it on for the length of time they do, it's something to get used to for them. But they're pretty good about it, and they'll only be going to school, 29, 30 days for their cohort at this time, but at least it'll be something for them to experience, and they're very, very happy about it. So thank you.
Wendy Jonathan.
Thank you. I first want to start off by explaining to you that, and I know we have some parents and staff still here that have spoken. There's an act called the Brown Act, and unfortunately, it ties our hands. If I speak on anything on behalf that you've mentioned during your public comments, and we end up having to vote on it as a board, we've now violated the Brown Act. So we are not allowed at all to respond. So I guess what I want to say is, I hear what you're saying, but I can't respond from a legal standpoint. And you don't need to respond, but I'm just telling you, we can't physically respond. It's like having a serial meeting, and now all of a sudden I know how everyone's going to vote if we bring something up. So I appreciate all your comments. We do hear you, we understand, but there's nothing we can unfortunately say, in response to it. I just want to share what I've been doing since we last met. I got to do Read Across America at Washington Charter School, which was a lot of fun. Our vice principal, Kamala Harris, has this cool book about superheroes. And if you haven't looked into it, you have to check it out. It is the coolest book. And I read it to Miss Miles' class. And she's, I believe, a third grade class. And I read it to her. And I promised her that when they opened up, I would bring in the book because she was going to be doing hybrid. So on Monday, when they opened up at school, I went to Washington Charter School, and I walked in the class and I delivered the book, and I promised I would come back on Thursday because cohort B was disappointed that they weren't there to be part of this. I have to say, I heard what you said, Superintendent Bailey, about somebody being so excited and best day ever. I actually had a parent come up and say, I asked my daughter how her day went, and she said, it was the best day ever. And I think we're hearing a lot of that. I saw a lot of wiggles and everything, all excitement. I had the luxury of visiting Washington Charter School on Monday and Lincoln Elementary. And then today I went to see Carter Elementary. I went to see Ford, Dr. Carrion, and Ronald Reagan. And I want to say I have to give a shout out to Mr. Zink and Mr. Bebo and Ms. Frazier were there at Washington Charter. They were there to help open the school and make sure things were smooth. And every single principal that I spoke to and staff, they wanted to thank the district, and specifically, they wanted to thank the cabinet. And they said if it wasn't for, Dr. Vollmer's curriculum and working with them, and if it wasn't for Dr. Salazar's working with the staff to make sure that everything was okay, and Mr. Aquino, I tell you, they love their PPE, and I've seen the closets, and they're like all excited about having all this stuff and seeing how well the campus is running and how things are running so smoothly. And Dr. Fisher, that they loved the fact that, especially with the special ed population and others, that things were working so well. From the huddle cameras that I was seeing, the school site monitors, they love this school site monitor thing, one per student, per classroom, and the way they're able to do it. And they were talking about equity, and some of those schools that are not Title I schools and have never really gotten the LFDs, and now they're walking in, and every single classroom has an LFD. And now they feel like there's equity in the district because they felt like there wasn't. So they're all excited. And they loved the full week prior to school coming back in hybrid in person. And they said, gosh, that might be a good idea of doing it, in real life, when you start school, maybe having that 1 week where you meet the kids virtually and then start school the following week. But they loved it, and it made me so proud, and the kids were so overwhelmingly happy. And I know hybrid is not for everyone, but I just am so glad that we were able to offer that to our students and our parents. And again, I want to thank you, and it made me very proud to be part of this district for all the things that we've had from our classified working 24/7 and our teachers as well. It's just been incredible. So it makes me a proud board member. So thank you very much.
Linda Porras.
Yes, well, I couldn't tell that Alexander had already left because everybody looks so tiny from where I'm sitting. So but I just wanted to welcome him, and it's always great to see Dr. Gustafson in the audience. And I know he's a proud principal and proud of his students. So, and I also wanted to congratulate Connie Rodriguez. She is a hard worker. Anytime I'm at the district, she's got her head in that computer, and she is really a hardworking girl. So I'm really happy for her that she got recognized. And also welcome Helen Chang as assistant principal to Jefferson Middle School. I went to Jefferson, and when I went to Jefferson, we were the Jaharas, not the Jaguars. But anyway, congratulations on your position, and welcome to the family there. And on that note, I also want to recognize Anthony Martinez, who is from Jefferson Middle School. He's the lead anchor for the Jaguar TV show, and he interviewed Jeff Stahl from KESQ TV, and they had it on the news, and it was really cute to see him, and they were just super excited about being interviewed from him. And I went to high school with the principal, Margot McCormick, and so I'm sure she's super proud of him too. And I'm excited about our district and what we've done and how everybody's worked so hard. And just like everybody's saying, I mean, I've just ditto everything that everyone's saying. I won't go into it, but I'm super proud and super excited that we're getting back to somewhat normal. And anyway, but thanks all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anna Conover.
I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the staff and students who've been recognized for various prizes and recognitions. It's good to hear. And I do want to thank every single staff member, from Superintendent Bailey down to every single member that works in this district, for the monumental task of reopening. I know it has been slow going, difficult, and a lot of hard work. I know that many people don't see the behind the scenes. You know, the nights, not just, I mean, we're talking the teachers, the classified staff, management, admin, nights of preparing. And then you come back and an update has come out and you have to change everything, and the public health mandates, they just kind of, you're right, they're just like a living document, they keep changing. So I do want to let everybody know that you guys did an awesome job. I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to visit, but that'll be happening next week. So thank you. I mean, it's just a big thank you. I read a book on gratitude today, on showing gratitude, and it's just a simple thing of thank you makes a difference. So thank you.
I know there's been mistakes, and I know that some people want us to be moving faster, and but I do recognize the great work of our teachers, staff, and administrators in being the only district in the Coachella Valley that's open. And it's been tough for everybody, and this is a situation that none of us have ever been in, and hopefully we will never be in it again. But we are working. Some people may not see the work that's happening behind the scenes, but we are trying. We want the band playing at the games. We want the cheerleaders on the sidelines. We want our students in art making art. We want our athletes playing games. We want our mathematicians solving problems. And we are working as hard as we can as a group. I don't know how many times I texted Mr. Bailey this weekend on Sunday, on his day off, on my day off. We're trying to solve your problems all the time. To the gentleman in the audience that mentioned the court case, yeah, I would really enjoy reading that. And so if you can provide me the site, if that's a federal or state, because I would like to look into the extent in which that order could affect us, because it is in a different county. And it's, okay, I would really like to be able to read that. But we, when I got up on Monday morning and I turned on the TV and I saw our classes open and I saw the film being happening at Jackson Elementary, I was proud to be a part of this district and know that we're leading the way back. And some people, you know, if you just listen here in this group of probably less than 30 people, some people will tell us we're moving too fast. Some people will tell us we're moving too slow. Some people will tell us that we're moving in the wrong direction. And I will just tell you, we are all trying to move in a way that will advance the best interests of our students. That is our priority. And so I thank everybody. Also, my left shoulder hurts a little bit, so I'll thank Laura Fisher for that. You know, and so, you know, and it was, we were standing in line and things for, you know, being part of the government, you know, it's amazing that we do get things done. And when something came together that we were able to take advantage of that. So I really appreciate the work you did there. But we are trying. We're trying to please everybody all the time, give you what you want. Some people want 5 days, some people want half days, some people want no days. And so as a school district that is basically marched in lockstep and provided the same experience for everybody all the time, you heard it. We have people that don't want to come back. We have people that think we haven't come back far enough. So we're trying, and I really want to give a pat on the back to staff, teachers, administrators. I mean, I was never prouder than I was on Monday saying, you know, man, we are open and we are in business and nobody else in the valley is. So that's something to be said, even if you don't like the job we're doing. So I like the job you're doing. Thank you very much. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you for those comments, and thank you to the board members that made it out to the sites that were available. Appreciate it. I wanted first to wish a happy birthday to Dr. Salazar. Today's her birthday. And I echo the sentiment that this was a heavy lift, and it was a lift that took place in a short time. So thank you to all certificated, classified staff, management staff, administrators. You all did an excellent job, but it starts right here with the board. It was the board leadership that got us here as soon as it was safe to do so, and that's always been your pledge, and here we are opening our schools, March 15 and March 29, for elementary and secondary, respectively. So there's a certain amount of kudos that goes to the board as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to share, someone made a comment earlier about the students on distance learning, and I actually felt bad or remiss. I didn't recognize those students. There's so much fanfare about the students coming back in person because we haven't experienced that in so long. It's almost a year to date since we've experienced that, believe it or not. But the students in distance learning absolutely deserve the fanfare as well. These moves to try and accommodate everyone's preferences, and I say everyone's preferences, pick that middle road, it yanks everyone's chain. I don't know how else to put it. And I give kudos to parents too, because parents are stepping up. You know, I was remiss in mentioning the students on distance learning, but I will say this: that was part of the classroom visit in the morning to see and I did not coin these terms. These came from teachers in the rooms I visited: the Zoomies and the Roomies, right? The Zoomies were partaking with the Roomies at the same time. Teachers were leading them in activities and dance and getting them engaged as a full unit, even though they're in separate cohorts. That was pretty cool. But I just say that because everyone played a part in this. And I realize it's difficult. We're going to finish out the year, finish it out strong, and God willing, and guidelines permitting, we're going to come back into a normal sphere in the fall. So thank you.
All right. That concludes board and superintendent comments. So now we'll move on to general functions, business services. I believe there's only one item on this. It's to approve the second interim financial report certification. Is there a motion?
So moved. Anna Conover.
Anna Conover. Is there a second?
Second, Wendy Jonathan.
By Wendy Jonathan. Is there any further discussion or questions for Mr. Aquino?
I just want to thank Jordan Aquino for making it always very enjoyable. I know you love it, and it's conveyed every time you do a report for us. So thank you.
Comments? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Okay, general function educational services, there's 6 of these, 19.1 to 19.6. Is there a motion to take this as a group, or we can pull them out individually?
I move we take 19.1 through 19.6 as a group.
By Anna Conover.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
Second, Patricia Pierce.
Items?
Briefly, 19.5, the new parent involvement. I am just so impressed with that. Love it. I love how the parents and family members of children that receive Title I Part A services shall be involved in the decisions regarding how the funds are allotted for parental involvement. I just really impressed with that and like that idea to have some ownership with our parents. So thank you. And also, I did have a question. It talked about elimination of participation of private school students in there, because I guess, did we fund the private schools before?
Actually, this is intriguing, and I'll let Dr. Kelly Mae Vollmer actually respond to that.
So I think you asked, do we fund private schools? Is that what you said?
It kind of implied it in the, and then it was lined out, so the new
Yeah.
one doesn't.
Right. So to that point, and then I think, answer what I think Mr. Bailey teed up for me. To that point, we actually do, with some of our title fundings that we receive, do have to, in some of them, there's an allocation that goes to the private schools, and we work kind of as a liaison, if you will, as they spend those funds. So that is part of what the State and Federal Programs Office does. However, in this specific policy, this specific exhibit, this actually, we've got a federal program monitoring review coming up, and in working with the state of California, one of the things that they indicated is that our parent involvement policy, and I use the word policy kind of in air quotes, that we normally have had in the district for quite a while, actually has to come to the board for approval and become part of a formal process. And so that's why this exhibit that didn't exist before is coming forward.
But now do we not have to participate in the private school funding for the students? Is that, did I misunderstand that?
I'm looking for exactly where you're referring to. We still do have to, but it may be that the parent involvement policy is, we don't have to participate in that part of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. General function personnel services, we have 20.1 to 20.5. Is there a motion to take these as a group or individually?
I move we take general functions, personnel services 20.1 through 20.5 as a group.
By Anna Conover, is there a second?
Second, Linda Porras.
Give it to Linda.
Okay, by Linda Porras. Is there any discussion on any one of these items?
I do have a comment. I'm looking at the MOUs, 20.2, and I just wanted to clarify that if an employee has asked for accommodations, whether they've been vaccinated or not, we're still honoring those accommodations for this school year, correct?
We engage in the interactive process, and each outcome depends on the specific individual things that are presented in that meeting. So I think that what was in the MOU is just a statement that makes it clear to the employees, the classified employees, and any others too, that we continue to engage in the interactive process and see if we can accommodate people. And as I had reported earlier, we've been able to accommodate almost everyone until the last couple of, there was one elementary teacher who we've hit the wall with the sub-availability. And so when we get to the point that the district isn't able to accommodate the last couple of requests we've had, but they're all individual. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to general function student support services 21.1 to 21.6. Is there a motion to take these together or individually?
I move to take general function student support services 21.1 to 21.6 as a group.
Or second?
So moved, Anna Conover.
By Anna Conover. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I do have a comment on 21.4, the revised administrative regulation for students, district residency. I just want to make sure I read that correctly because there was quite a bit crossed out and stuff. So what I understand is that, let's say I don't live in the district. Right. So my children can't come here, but yet I work in the district for a certain amount of days. I can't remember.
10 hours a week.
10 hours a week. If I work in this district, that means that gives me residency and I can put my child in Desert Sands School District.
That's correct. That's correct. It's different, obviously, than what our normal interdistrict transfer process is, where the district of attendance would release, and then it would come to Desert Sands, whether it's Palm Springs or Coachella, and that we would either approve or deny. Usually districts approve. This is in addition to that process through the Allen bill. That yes, if at least one parent is working, and of course CWA would verify, the parents would have to bring all that information. And then the parent would not need to go through any other process other than proving proof of employment within district boundaries. And then the only way that it can be revoked if the parent no longer works in district boundaries. But the transfer does not have to be renewed as long as we have ongoing documentation that the parent is working, at least one of the parents is working in the district.
Quite a game changer.
Yes.
I was going to mention that also. I think this is one of the ways when Jordan talked about our declining enrollment. I mean, this is something that I think we should advertise in the Desert Sun, put some commercials on. I think being the only district that's open, we can save jobs for our staff, our teachers, and everybody. If we lost what, 593 last year, 596 and 860 plus this year. And I think when I first got here and Donna was running the show over at La Quinta High School, we were just under 30,000. The district we were brushing right under, we were like 29,700 and something. I kept thinking we were going to go over and we never did. But this is a way to fill our classrooms by getting the word out. And we have a lot of people that come into, especially our middle cities of La Quinta and Palm Desert, to work from all over this area. And I think this is a real area where we can save ourselves. So anyway, it's a huge game changer for us. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That carries. General function superintendent, none. Consent items, student matters, none. Consent items, business services, 24.1 to 24.9. Is there a motion to take these as a group or individually?
I move we take consent items, business services 24.1 through 24.9 as a group.
Anna Conover, is there a second?
Second, Wendy Jonathan.
Comment on any of these 9 items?
I just would like to say that I'm really happy to see that Palm Desert High School is having a voter registration club. I think that's great. That's all.
Any other items? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to consent items, educational services. We have 2 items, 25.1 to 25.2. Is there a motion to take these either individually or as a group?
Okay, consent items, educational services 25.1 to 25.2 as a group.
By Anna Conover, is there a second?
Second, Patricia Pierce.
Pierce? Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? That carries 5-0. Consent items. Did I write this wrong? There's none for personnel? Personnel services, there was none. Okay. Consent items, student support services. There's 27.1 to 27.5.
I move we take consent items, student support services 27.1 through 27.5 as a group. Anna Conover.
Conover, is there a second?
Second, Wendy
Second,
Johnson.
Linda Porras.
Give it to Linda.
Seconded by Linda Porras. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. 28, consent items, superintendent, none. 29, personnel action certificated. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead. You can go ahead.
So moved.
A second.
Discussion.
Yes, Paul Bluto is retiring with 25 years at Shadow Hills High School. Reggie Powell, who I know quite well and actually taught with, is retiring from 27 years with the district, and he's currently been at Roosevelt. And then one that I'm very sad to see go as well, our Dr. Donna Salazar, who has worked for our district 30 years, and we really appreciate you, and I'm debating whether I want to hold that one item so I can vote no on it.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I did want to, well, happy birthday, Dr. Salazar, and I do want to congratulate you on your retirement. I mean, 30 years is the commitment, and, you know, if COVID has not taught us something, it's that tomorrow's never promised, so enjoy every single day that you can. Enjoy it.
I just want to say happy birthday, Donna, and you are definitely going to be missed. You must have started when you were 20, because there's no way you look like you've been teaching for 30 years. Anyway, I wish you all the best and enjoy retirement and your kids and grandbabies and husband and whatever fun things you want to do. You don't have to get up early in the morning and stay up late at night. So anyway, congratulations, Donna.
That starts on July 1st, though, so I expect you to get up early tomorrow and be in here. But
wake up nice and early
just
tomorrow
FYI
morning,
on
and
that
stay
one.
really late tonight because you're not retired yet.
All right. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations, Dr. Salazar. Personnel actions classified. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved, Wendy Jonathan.
Wendy Jonathan. Is there a second?
Second, Patricia Pierce.
Patricia Pierce. Any discussion?
Yes, Alicia Baltazar in nutritional services. She's retiring after 16 years. Jenny Cabral from Indio High School. She's a paraeducator, and she's been with the district 40 years. That's amazing. Wow. Minerva Munez, paraeducator at Amistad, has been with the district for 26 years. Maria Nolan, office specialist in special ed. I actually know her. She used to be one of the office specialists in one of the schools I was at, and she's retiring after 20 years. And Jesse Perales from Earhart, he's a custodian, and he's been with the district for 15 years. Thank you so much for all those people in their service. Enjoy retirement.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries 5-0. Call out of closed session items. Mr. Bailey.
We have 3 items this evening in closed session as related to closed session agenda item 3.1. The board took action to accept the suspension of classified employee number 262490, custodian, under the terms of a stipulated suspension agreement. This was on a motion by Mrs. Jonathan, seconded by Mrs. Conover. The motion passed 4-0 with 1 trustee absent. Second, listed under closed session 3.3, tonight in closed session, the board took action to approve a general release and settlement agreement SSS number 06/2020-2021. This motion was made by Mrs. Conover, seconded by Mrs. Jonathan. The motion carried 5-0. And lastly, listed under closed session agenda, item 3.4, tonight in closed session, the board took action to approve general release and settlement agreement SSS number 07/2020-2021 on a motion by Mrs. Conover, seconded by Mrs. Jonathan. Motion carried 5-0.
Suggestions for future agendas? Tricia Pierce.
I have none.
Jonathan.
I have none.
Linda Porras.
I have none, thanks.
Anna Conover.
None, thank you.
And I have none. So, I'll lick my fingers here. Announcements. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education is Tuesday, April 20th at 7 p.m. in the District Education Center in La Quinta, California. We are going to go back into closed session and continue our discussions. So we are in recess.
Thank you for being here, Dr. G.
Hey, Dave, is your league back up? What's that? Or is your league back up? Are you guys playing volleyball and basketball? No, you guys are just